Circle K and get it. You got to go to a liquor store that's open certain hours. Here, grocery store on the side of the street. I mean, you can get it anywhere, man. Plus, where I live, there's like bars surrounding me. So I think it's convenience, and it's a way to check out when I'm feeling sorry for myself or I go into poor me mode.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of I Love Being Sober. My name is Tim Westbrook, and I'm the CEO of Camelback Recovery here in the always sunny and always sober Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have helped thousands of people on their path to recovery. We started this show because there's so much misinformation about addiction treatment, mental illness, and recovery in general. There's so much more to recovery than just going to inpatient treatment, seeing a therapist, and going to 12-step meetings. All of those things are important, and AA saved my life. However, to find long-term recovery and live happy, joyous, and free, there's a lot more to it than just stopping the drinking, stopping the drugs, stopping the sex addiction, or stopping any addictive behavior for that matter. To live a new life, a person needs new, healthy lifestyle habits, amongst many other things. Typically, this includes new eating habits, new sleeping habits, new exercise habits, new hobbies, new interests, new friends. Self-care becomes a priority, and the list goes on. Those are the types of things we talk about here on the show. And since 1993, our guest today has generated nearly $417 million in sales profits for his marketing students, clients, and joint venture partners on 6 continents. Best-selling author Harvey Mackay acknowledges him as the Warren Buffett of digital marketing because of his unique ability to make money for his students, clients, and JV partners. He has shared the stage with Richard Branson, Larry King, Tony Robbins, Marianne Williamson, Robert Kiyosaki, Susie Orman, Mikhail Gorbachev, the Dalai Lama, and 2 U.S. presidents. As a virtual trainer with over 22,000 hours of training time and nearly 4,800 interviews, his business lifetime goal, along with his colleague, Jack Canfield, is to influence training over 1 million other trainers by his 77th birthday. But we're not going to talk about our guest's business strategies or his accomplishments today. We're only talking about his sobriety strategy and how to handle slips and relapses. Alex Mandossian, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you, Tim. And I love that introduction, especially if my mom could listen to it, because she still doesn't know what I do, but she knows about my recovery and she's proud of it. So we have that in common.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we're going to dig right into it. We're going to make this a quick show today. So give me the quick version of your path to recovery.
Well, I came into AA because of a friend who hired me back in 1992. We were in Manhattan. In going to meetings, and lots of meetings, the old timers poke fun at me when they hear me say this, but I would be categorizing myself as a high bottom drunk. I wasn't vomiting in the gutter. I'd wake up with a hangover. I'd be upset of what I did the night before, and the behavior wasn't sustaining long-term health or remaining happy, joyous, and free. I embarrassed myself in public, many times. And so because my friend was in the program and he was then my boss, I would go to meetings with him. And so in Manhattan, you can literally walk from one meeting to the next, and it's almost 24 hours. So it was just a haven. Everyone walks there, and it's about 12 miles by 3 miles wide. And we were just in Midtown, and it was a great experience. And so I came in 1992, got a sponsor, and the program wasn't just about alcoholism. It was just, for me, a way to live. There was a new language. There was a new community, many communities, depending on the meetings. And then there was a new role model, which was my sponsor, who did it for himself more than he did it for me. There's an old story with Dr. Bob and Bill W. that if you know something about the history of AA, that is also held to account. So I stayed sober, meaning no drinking, no drugging, until 2003. We moved to Northern California, and I thought I'd graduated.
Right.
So that I didn't.
How long did you stay sober that first time?
11 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
so sober for 11 years, then you
Yeah.
moved to California. Okay.
Right. And I heard all the language, and I listened to all the stories. Probably in the beginning, 90 and 90, and then 3 to 4 meetings a week, sometimes 5 if I had a bad week, maybe 7, sometimes twice a day, because it was just so available. You don't even have to drive. And so I thought I graduated. So I didn't look at it as a relapse or a slip. I look at it as an ascension, like high school to college or college to the work environment. So I didn't think anything of it. And I didn't go back to drinking or drugging. I would have maybe a glass or 2 of wine. My then wife, Amy, she had no challenges with drinking. And we had 2 kids, Gabriel and Brianna, 2000 and 2002. We lived in Northern California. And then when things started to get heated with work, stress, relationship in the marriage got very anxious and worrisome, that's when I started to drink and drug again. And that was just to numb out. And that was around 2007. And then that continued for about 5 years until it escalated. And I did go to rehab in Napa Valley for a week, right? Mm-hmm. And my favorite thing, Tim, because I know with Sober Living that you run, the people come out of rehab and go into your homes just to have a 3-point landing after they leave, just more of a indoctrination back to life. That 1 week, I was so grateful that I wasn't everyone else, because the meth addicts would be coming in and the heroin addicts. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm not that bad. So maybe I can drink and do recreational drugs from time to time. So when I came out, I didn't do that. I stayed sober for 5 years and I didn't go to meetings. And that was the mistake, because I knew the language, but I wasn't locked into the community, looking forward to a homeroom, having a sponsor. You're my sponsor. That's why we're here. Right. When I leave you a message, like on our iPhones, you say, no, dude, we need to talk today. Even if we miss each other, at least we need to talk. That's how I learned it. And that's how we're going to do this thing. So in 2014, I had a drink in San Diego. I didn't look at it as a slip again. See, it's just the way I defined it. I didn't look at it as a relapse. And that continued all the way through 2020. And then in 2020, I stopped, started going to meetings.
So just to pause you for a second there. So you had 11 years worth of sobriety.
Yeah.
And then we always talk about environment always wins.
Yeah.
And so although you didn't go back to drinking immediately, when you moved to Northern California, you weren't plugged in. You weren't going to meetings. You didn't have a home group. You didn't have a service commitment. You didn't have the community. You didn't have your guys or your people there to support you on your path, which, as they say, if you spend enough time in the barber shop, you're eventually going to get a haircut. Yeah. And if you're spending enough time just in life in general, around the average everyday person who's not an alcoholic, eventually, and for you, it took 5 years, right? Yeah. So you held it together for 5 years, and then you probably weren't full blown back at it right away.
No, I wasn't. But then it escalated, and beyond not getting plugged in, I didn't see the meaning of getting plugged in. I didn't act as though my life depended on not drinking. Right? Don't drink for today. I mean, you hear that all the time in the rooms, right? That's what you just don't drink today. Hopefully for an hour in the rooms or 2 hours. If you go to 2 meetings, you're not going to drink during that time. And just getting plugged into the community, having the sponsor, it's a lot harder to lie, steal, and cheat when you're plugged in like that. I didn't attach meaning to that. I thought I have a disease. It's now cured. And there's no vaccine for this, but I haven't done it for a long enough time. So I'll just go back to normal. But normal doesn't work, because just through college and through high school, I thought the whole purpose of drinking alcohol was to get drunk. So I didn't see, like, what's the pleasure? I never understood people who only drink half a beer in a restaurant. Like, what are you thinking? I mean, you're wasting, all of that numbness that, could be doing something for you. So it's just the meaning I attached, right? And so that's the issue with slips and relapse. They're really the same thing. I could rationalize and say a relapse is much more major and a lot more happened, but it's the same thing. I went back on my personal commitment. And I'll tell you, every step, every tradition, every prayer, all the languaging in AA, everything I believe is wrapped around self-awareness. And when I'm not self-aware, then I get myself in trouble, no matter how intelligent I am, how much money I've made. I've made money because I am, have an addictive personality. Just like other alcoholics, they know how to produce. They're great salespeople, and they're just that part of society that they're very productive, but then they're destructive. I am, anyway, I'll speak on my behalf, because I believed that I had graduated and I wanted to be normal. I like recovery to be the normal, and that's the only way to stay sober. So through self-awareness, if recovery is the normal, not the new normal, that is normal, knowing what it has done by not being that way, then that's the way to be. I didn't want to be the slip guy. I didn't want to be, I'd have 30 years sobriety. I didn't want to be the relapse guy, but that's what I share, in the rooms. So the key isn't that, to me, the year, the 5 years, even 11 years, that wasn't as much of a challenge for me as realizing that I never graduate from this program. And if I can offer anything to anyone watching or listening, there's no graduation. You just keep going. And it's an honor to be in it.
Right. So how do you define a slip versus a relapse? What's the difference?
Did this for you. I wrote this question for you because it's the exact same thing. However, a slip, to me, 2 or 3 days, a relapse, ongoing, hangover, gutter drunk. It's the same thing. Relapse and slip goes back on the self-awareness of a commitment of not drinking and staying sober and not being true to the program. The beauty of this program is it doesn't shame or blame you. We do that. We do enough of that ourselves, right?
Right.
But it allows you back in. And my most recent slip invited me back in, and it was just like another challenge. And here we go. We're calling each other. I'm calling you every day, and not just leaving messages, course correcting me and saying, no, we need to talk, right? Besides going to meetings. So slip and relapse are the same thing. And it means drinking and going back on the commitment.
Right. So what are you doing moving forward, or what are your strategies to prevent another slip or another relapse from happening again in the future?
Well, the first thing is bringing meaning to the program is I'm in it for life. I'm a lifer, right? And it's not I'm in jail. I'm free. I'm out of jail.
Right.
Felons and drug addicts, alcoholics, there's a term in the medical field. It's a fancy word called recidivism. And a recidivist is someone who backslides. I'm a recidivist. 11 years, recidivism. 5 years, recidivism, right? And so that means backsliding and going back. A felon goes back to jail. A drug addict starts using again. And you have stats on this show, the stats of people making it to 1 year and to 5 years and so on and so forth. So recidivism also in business, if a student or a client doesn't do the work, they're backsliding. If you're a parent, your kids are not fulfilling their agreements, or parents not fulfilling agreements, with their children. So I'm just redefining that there is no graduation, to this program. I'm in it for life. It's fun. The community is supportive, and almost every day, we're in a group where we're texting our gratitude with our next level gratitude, which is a bunch of guys. I love men's meetings. I go to 2 co-ed meetings a week, but I love going to men's meetings because it's, for me, I get to share things that I feel more comfortable, sharing with other men. So it's kind of like free therapy. Costs maybe $1 to $5, depending on what I have in my wallet, to put, and fulfill one of the traditions. So I'm just redefining what the program actually is, both secretly and publicly, now publicly.
So I think you mentioned the stats, and the stats are, most people relapse. More than 90% of people relapse within the first year. And people that make it to a year, statistically, they have a 67% chance of making it to 5 years. Mm-hmm. And then the people that make it to 5 years have an 85% chance of making it for life. So most people, and what I've seen people that have 8 years, 10 years, 17 years get, of sobriety, of long-term sobriety, and they relapse. And it's like, oh my gosh, how did that happen? That person appeared to have it all together. But I think it's staying connected. And even though, and I've heard many people say this, and this may have happened to you. It's like, hey, I'm good. I've got it. I've got this figured out. I've been sober for 11 years. I don't need to go back to AA. But this is the thing. The thing is that being of service and helping another person. So even if you don't personally need it, if I don't think I personally need it, I'm going to go because I'm going to help another person. And by me helping another person and being of service, that's going to keep me on the path. That's going to help me stay clean and sober.
Well, you're talking about sponsorship, basically, and also being of service, inside the rooms. Having a home group, I think, is very important. A lot of people say that just to stay connected. I'll tell you why I relapsed. I can only speak on my behalf and my lack of self-awareness. And I've never done an interview like this before. So I'm sure people are going to hear this interview who don't even know, I'm an alcoholic and drug addict. And they're going to go, wow, I never knew. And many times, what's my favorite thing, it just recently happened. There's a new client that's coming on board with my business. And he asked me if I'm a friend of Bill's, because I was kind of talking some of the language. And, other alcoholics and drug addicts can sniff that out, right? They're like, they're like bloodhounds. And he said, are you a friend of Bill's? I said, I am. Yeah. And so all of a sudden that connection was stronger, right? Now, the reason I know I've slipped and I've relapsed is not only because I felt I graduated, but I isolated. So lying, stealing, and cheating. Yeah. But there's one more word, rationalizing. So I started to rationalize, hey man, I'm supporting my kids. I'm the breadwinner. I need more time. I don't have the half hour before the meeting and a half hour after meeting, for coffee. That's 2 hours out of my day. I'm awake 16 hours, 17, and so I just have to let that go. If it's second or even third, it doesn't work. It's got to be first. Everything has to be, doesn't have to be, but for it to work, the whole day, work included, I believe, has to be centered around the program. So it's the number one priority, because without that, I'm no good as a dad. I'm no good as an ex-husband. I'm no good as a partner. I'm no good as a friend. I'm no good as a sponsee. And I'm no good as someone of service, whether it's for Camelback Recovery or in the room. So putting the program first, becoming a sponsor when enough time has been put together, getting sponsored, having a homeroom. Like you said, it's about connection. Why did I relapse? In my mind, in my heart, is because I isolated. So the moments I start isolating, and you kind of catch me because it's easy for me to do. It's easy. I'm an introvert, so I know how to isolate quite well and then rationalize it. But the moment I start doing that, that is the first step to slipping. So I like to think through the relapse and the slip, not through the drink, because I don't really crave alcohol physically, like I've heard in the rooms a lot. I look at it as a way that's very convenient to numb out. Drugs aren't as convenient. I don't have a dealer. I don't have access to my favorite drugs, but alcohol is just so convenient. And that's what I found, to do. So I think it is a mental disorder. I think it's about self-sabotage. I would even put it in the category of self-loathing for me. The times that I really dislike myself, that was just a way to separate me from me. So the non-slip and the non-relapse journey is to think through what will happen afterwards. And I really don't want to go down that path, because I don't think I can face you and others who know my situation right now. So that scares me. I like to be in fear that way, not in other areas, but in that way. I like to just fear it, because I always hear, the addict is doing push-ups waiting for me anytime, like in Pinocchio, like, come on, let's go to this island, right?
So I heard you say self-loathing, which when I hear you say self-loathing, feeling sorry for yourself, that makes me think of a victim. And that's the victim mentality versus being responsible. Yeah. And if you're so if you're in that victim mentality, you're more likely to take a drink.
100%.
100%.
100%.
Okay.
I mean, not only likely, I think it's 100% because that mentality, knowing what some of the options are, and because I found some of the options, like, for example, I hope this makes sense to someone watching or listening. And I hope this is useful to whoever's watching or listening. It is useful for me. I'm doing it for me just as much as I'm doing it for anyone else listening. But I've been to Tanzania in Africa, and there, they have lions. And there's a tribe in Tanzania that's known to kill lions with their bare hands if the lion has eaten another human in the village. So I happened to be there when a lion had attacked a human. And I asked the chief when I was there, this is 7 years ago, I said, why do you have to kill the lion? He said, oh, Mr. Alex, very polite. He's the chief. He goes, imagine if you're a lion and you're chasing antelope and zebras. You chase them down, you're exhausted. I mean, you have all your wives chase them instead, and then you get to eat it, right? Because the male lions, they don't do any chasing, right? And then they bring back this shit, and the meat is tough, and the animals, the prey is running fast, and they get bucked in the face and all that stuff. Circle of life. He says, imagine you have a human. A human doesn't run very fast and has the tenderest meat of all. It's like filet mignon to a lion. So the moment a lion goes after a human and actually tastes that flesh, you have to kill it in the village because they'll always go after humans. They'll never go after zebras and antelope anymore. And that analogy, as harsh as it may sound, is the same thing with alcohol. Like, because I know what it can do and how easy it is to get access to, then that's no longer an option. I have to be kind of like a lion in recovery. And I got to be a vegetarian, right? Like in, I forgot what movie it was, but I think it was A Shark's Tale. Like, the shark was a vegetarian, right? And he's pining over, eating fish. So it's the same kind of thing with alcohol. It's like a drug of choice that's easy to get, especially in the U.S. Overseas in Europe, you can't get it at a 7-Eleven, or in Australia, you can't go into a Circle K and get it. You got to go to a liquor store that's open certain hours. Here, grocery store, on the side of the street. I mean, you can get it anywhere, man. Plus, where I live, there's like bars surrounding me. So I think it's convenience, and it's a way to check out when I'm feeling sorry for myself or I go into poor me mode.
Right. So this makes me think of, I'm in yoga teacher training right now. And there was a conversation, and one of the people in the class said she didn't believe that we all had free will. She thought that life is basically like everything is the way that it is. We don't have free will. We don't have free choice. And I'm like scratching my head going, I mean, that doesn't make sense to me, because that means I'm a victim. That leads to me being a victim. That means I'm not responsible for my life. And if I'm not responsible for my life, then I can blame anything on everybody else. I got news. My life, how I grew up.
Yeah, I got news for her. The reason why we are in recovery is because of free will. Right. If we didn't have free will, we wouldn't be in recovery, right? And the Chiron here at the bottom, the lower third, says why relapsing is not a part of any sobriety program. I've heard that relapsing is a part of it. Hey, it's okay. No, that's the mentality I had. And now I'm the relapse and slip guy when I'm sharing. And I don't want to be that guy. I'm ashamed to be that guy. I feel guilty, which are worthless emotions, but I don't want to be the guy. I'd rather stand up and say, I'm Alex. I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict. I always say recovering. And I have 31 years. That's what I'd rather say. But I can't, because I haven't earned the right to say it. So maybe that was my fate with free will, because I get a lot of feedback at meetings that you're at. People thanking me who are, 1 year in and saying, I don't want to be you. I don't want to be the relapse and slip guy, even though, I had time in between. And so if I'm doing something for someone else who could be suffering, then I feel like, I found my brand within Alcoholics Anonymous.
Okay, so I've got another question for you here. So you're a pretty smart guy. You're successful on paper, anyways. Do you think it's harder for a guy like you, for a person like you that's smart, successful, has his life together? Do you think it's harder for a guy like you to stay clean and sober than a homeless person on the streets?
I think it's equal, but because since you've labeled me as smart, and I am street smart too, like I grew up with very little, and I really made it, and I don't have any role models in my family. No one is a drunk or a drug addict or alcoholic in my family, both sides, right? So I got to have that distinction. My kids don't express any of that. However, I would say the street person or someone who is not as accomplished, let's say in business, because I have more access to money, I have more access to sneaking. I have more ways to lie and to steal time, not to steal things. I stole a Big Red in the 7th grade, and my mom grounded me for 2 weeks. That's the only thing I've ever stolen in my life. So I was never a thief. Stealing my dignity away, stealing my fidelity to someone else and betraying them with my word and lying to them, cheating on that. It's not always just, with intimacy. So I think being successful, and we have a mutual friend that says, Alex, because you're smart and because you're successful, you may find it harder to be sober. I find it hard to be sober if I disconnect. I find it hard to be sober if I isolate. I find it hard to be sober if I don't remain humble, if I stay in hubris, which is arrogance, right? So I think the guy on the street or the gal on the street, there's someone I see every single day, and I buy her a sandwich at Circle K every single day. Same sandwich, same everything. And she's still on the street. I don't know if she's a drunk or not, but that's my act of service when I'm coming back from my F45, which you're well aware of. And it feels good to do that. And then she's also my icon of what not to be, because she's out there, in the winter, it's a little cold here, even though we're Arizona, but in the summer, man, it's like, 115 out there, even in the shade, it's pretty tough. So I'm grateful I'm not that person. I do what I can to feed her. And I never see her with any alcohol. So I don't know what her story is. But she has my grandmother's name, Esther. So somehow through Providence, that's one way of acting of service. I just think it's easier to outsmart myself because I'm labeled as smart or successful, because people won't find out. It's kind of like a corrupt politician. Like people may not find out or don't know, have any idea how that person really is, or someone in Hollywood, anyone, who has the ability to hide, who they really are. You can't hide in any recovery program, in my opinion. You just can't. In your sober living homes, you can't hide. You got to make your bed. You got to go to breakfast. You got to go to lunch and dinner. Hopefully it's communal. So every once in a while, Alex comes in with Tim and we do a little presentation on a Sunday. Sometimes we weep. We always hug. And then we have meetings on Fridays. So you can't hide. And if you do, or if I do, I'll speak in the first person, it's going to lead to trouble. Not right away, but it'll lead to trouble.
Well, and everybody knows if you're lying. You think nobody knows. You think you can hide, but you really can't hide. Everybody knows. And I think going back to being smart, being successful means you're a great salesperson, and possibly you can sell yourself on your own ideas.
That's the problem. And that's
right.
Really, that's a source of, I think, hubris and arrogance. I'll flip it. I mean, Tim, you're smart. Yeah. You're an A student. You can sell, right? You're a great referent. You refer a lot of people to high ticket communities and groups that we belong to. And so, you're in the same boat I am, and you've done it ongoing, without a slip. And so you're a good example for me to live by. And as my sponsor, I told you my story without the most previous slip when I first got to Arizona, and things were going great. Things are still going great. It's just a little chink in the armor recently.
Right. So is there a question that you wanted me to ask you today that I didn't ask?
What's the most important part of your recovery to living happy, joyous, and free, Alex? You ready?
I'm ready.
I love the economy of not asking the question again. So we have a course, talk less, sell more. So you do really well at that. Mm-hmm. So the most important thing is my morning ritual. Nothing even comes close. Not my nighttime ritual before going to bed, not getting a good night's sleep. All those are important, but the morning ritual, how I indoctrinate myself into the day, starting afresh. I'm not always waking up in a great mood. Sometimes I wake up tired. Sometimes I didn't get enough sleep. But when I wake up, I have a ritual. Some is business. A lot of it's physical, early in the morning. And by the time 8 a.m. rolls around, I've done more than a lot of people do all day. And that makes me feel very productive, not in the comparison of it, but just knowing I've got momentum. And alcohol and drugs don't even, pop in my mind when I'm immersed, in that morning ritual. So I wake up and there are these like little mini plastic spikes that yoga teachers give to their students. Sometimes I stand on those barefoot and it kind of wakes me up. And then I do breath work, Wim Hof breath work, which you introduced me to, but I do know Wim Hof through business, and his story, is amazing. So I do that. And then I write copy for half an hour, actually 33 minutes and 33 seconds, because that's what my mentor did. And then I go to F45. And so I wake up very early, and F45, which is a functional fitness in groups. That's my group interaction. That's kind of my meeting. That's my meeting. That's, physical. And so I'm fit like you, and it's really fun to go there. And that's 45 minutes, Saturdays, 1 hour. Then on the way back, I buy a sandwich for Esther at the Circle K on Camelback. And then I come back home, I shower. Before I start my day, I do a third step prayer. And then I put on some binaural music, which is, I don't know if I believe it or not, but placebo effect, it works, lower stress, be more focused, and all that shit, right? So I listen to it, there's no lyrics. And then, I start, planning my day, and I own my morning. When I slip, or when I slipped, I don't own my morning. It's frenetic. Okay. I'm out of the zone. I'm all over the place. I'm not on these rails of moving forward, not rails of drugs, but rails of just advancing and moving forward. I also plug into a group on text called Next Level Gratitude. And then currently I do 4 meetings a week. So this past week, 5. That's part of the regimen. You and I meet on Wednesday mornings. We do step work at Starbucks, and then we go to a men's meeting right afterwards. And that's a fun time too, because I get to connect with you. So when I stopped doing that, which I did prior to the slip, even though I went up north to Canada, I think that set me up. And we didn't talk about it, but there is a slip before the slip. There is a relapse before the relapse. And, in sales, they call it buying signals. Those are the slip signals that you can be very aware of. So when I stop being self-aware, I'm not saying anything that is new to anyone. I'm just reminding you something that you already know, whether you're drinking now and you're listening, or you've been sober, veteran or newbie, doesn't matter. Like, this, it's just a matter of applying it and staying connected and not isolating. So that morning ritual, I can't think of anything more important.
Yeah. And as I'm sitting here listening to you, it's, you have the routine, and it's great. It's easy to continue doing the routine and doing all the things and checking the boxes when you feel like it.
Yeah.
But, as they say, it's when you don't want to do it is when you need to do it the most. Yeah. When you don't want to call your sponsor is when you need to call your sponsor. When you don't want to go to a meeting, that's when you need to go to a meeting. When you don't want to journal and meditate, that's when you need to journal and meditate. When you don't want to go to the gym and do the community fitness class at F45, that's really when you need to do it.
My sponsor in Manhattan, I've never shared this with you. Hopefully you'll like it. Hopefully anyone listening or watching will like it. He said the difference between a child and an adult is an adult does things, especially a parent. An adult or a parent does things when they don't want to do it, and a child doesn't do things when they don't want to do it, right? So I'm regressing back to childhood when I go into my addict is taking over. It's kind of like the little devil on the shoulder saying, hey, let's go back to elementary school. You can do whatever the, I'm sorry for swearing.
Yeah. It's like, I don't have time. I'm busy. I'm successful. I've got, I have some new clients. I need some I have copy that I need to write. So you can come up with all of these reasons why you can't go back and do the little things that help you stay clean and sober.
And also, I found that when you tell on yourself, when I tell on myself, when I'm in that zone, it's hard to stay there. And who would I tell on myself to? You, right? You're the safest source for me to tell on myself. And I do, from time to time when I sense it coming up. And if I don't sense it, you're kind enough to remind me and nudge me, and poke me in the ribs. And I know that it comes from love. And I don't think I've ever resisted you. Like, you just call me. We need to talk. Don't just leave messages, which is, creative avoidance. I think the recipe for not wanting to do something is not look at the whole progression of everything that's going to get done in the morning, at night, in the afternoon. What's the next thing? And then let's build momentum on that. So my next thing is to get my butt in the car and go to F45. Once I go to F45 and I have the energy of the people around me, I don't have to go all out. I can leave something on the floor and not go all out like I'm used to doing, right? That's because that's who I am. That shows up in other ways. But I could just go through it, and then I'll feel better getting back in the car and going back home and getting that sandwich for Esther, So I think it's, if you look at the next thing, and then when you don't do the next thing and you decide to say, "Mom, that's not for me. I'm not going to do it today." Watch what happens. If you're listening to this, chances are there's a good reason you won't do it the next day either, or the next, and then that is the slip before the slip, the relapse before the relapse. If you can tell on yourself immediately, that's happy, joyous, and free.
Yeah, and that takes being self-aware to know and to reflect and say, okay, I'm not going to do that again.
One final thing is I learned that pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. So I don't want to suffer.
There you go.
I don't mind being in pain and doing things I don't want to do, but I don't want to suffer. So that's why I've redefined what the program means to me.
Awesome. Alex, thank you so much for joining us today. How can people find you if they want to find you, if they want to learn more about you?
Sure. I have all kinds of websites online. I'm a dinosaur. I've been on since 1995, before Google. But the best website would be my podcast site, which is allsellingaside.com. And the reason that's the best site for anyone listening is because there's nothing for sale there. And I won't be cyber stalking you after you come in and opt in. And so allsellingaside.com, you can listen to any of the podcasts. You just look at, what the descriptions are. And it's all about business, but I utilize story, and I think you'll find it interesting if you're like most others who were there.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And thanks everyone for listening, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Tim.